In this video, we're going to be solving the quadratic equations by completing the square. Usually when we complete the square, we do it when we have a 1 as our leading coefficient and when our b value, the second value, is even. Although it can be done when it's not even or when the leading coefficient is not a 1, which I will show you. So in our first example here, we have x squared minus 4x minus 1 equals 0. So we're going to begin by moving over this 1. Right, we're going to move that 1 over to the other side. So we're going to have x squared minus 4x. We're going to put plus leave a space equals 1 plus leave a space. Now this leave a space, that's going to be the same number when we put in. Okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to take this middle number and we're going to divide that middle number by 2. Okay, we're going to divide that middle number by 2, which is going to give us the answer negative 2 in this case, right? Negative 2. Then we're going to take that and we're going to square it. And that number is the number that we are going to put in this space on both sides. So it's a positive 4, so plus 4 plus 4. Okay. Then, because we're completing the square, what it's going to look like is x plus or minus something squared equals something. Okay, that's what that's going to look like. So we know that we have our x, right? So x. Now this next number comes from right here. Let's see if I can let me use a different color really fast. Let's not use green right there. Let's use orange for that, because I would like to use green for the number we're putting down. So minus 2, that's the number that goes there. Then I add these numbers, I do whatever it says, 1 plus 4, and I bring that number down, and I'm going to get a 5. And then from here, I'm going to solve it. So here we're going to solve for x. So my first step is to get rid of my squared. So I'm going to square root both sides. And remember, because I'm taking the square root of a variable, I need to account for the positive answer and I need to account for the negative answer. Okay? Then I'm going to add 2 to both sides. So I'm going to get x equals 2 plus the square root of 5. And then I'll add 2 over here and get x equals 2 minus the square root of 5. And that is going to be my solution. So I could either write it like this, or I could write it as x equals 2 plus or minus the square root of 5. Either way is fine. Let's move that out of our way. So, or you could write it as x equals 2 plus or minus the square root of 5, right? So that is our solution. So what happens when our leading coefficient, right, this number right here, what happens when that is not a 1? Well, what's nice to know is the first step is the same. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to subtract 3 from both sides. So that we have 2x squared plus 8x plus leave a space. You know what, this might be a little bit easier if we don't do that first step the same. We're going to actually first divide everything by the leading coefficients. We're going to divide everything by 2. This is going to be a lot easier to do it this way. All right, so that's going to give me x squared plus 4x plus 3 halves equals 0. Now I can move over my 3 halves, and that's going to give me x squared plus 4x plus leave a space equals negative 3 halves plus leave a space. Right, just like we did on letter A. So remember, just like on letter A, we're going to take this middle value, we're going to divide that value by 2. That looks like a 9. Let me just fix that really fast. Here we go. We're going to divide it by 2. So 4 divided by 2 is a 2. Then we're going to take that number and we're going to square it. So we're going to get a 4, and then that's the number that we put into the yellow spot. So then we put the 4, and then we put the 4 there. So now we want to rewrite this portion, right? We're going to rewrite this portion so that it's as a quantity, right? So we're going to have our x, and this time, right, it's a positive 2, so plus 2 quantity squared equals, and now we need to know what is negative 3/2 plus 4. Now that's something that you can plug into your calculator and it will give you the value. So we plug it in and we're going to get 5/2. So 5/2. And now we're ready to solve. So we're going to square root both sides. Remember, we have to account for a positive and a negative. So I'm going to do this one like this, the square root of 5 over 2. Right? Then I'm going to need to rationalize my denominator. So what I might have done to save myself a little bit of time is I might rationalize the square root of 5 over the square root of 2. So rationalize that and get the square root of 10 over 2. And then we're going to take that from that rationalization and we're going to put it here. Okay? So radical 10 over 2, right? Radical 10 over 2. Notice that I only wrote it one time, but because I have the plus or the minus sign in there, I'm accounting for the positive and the negative solution. So now I can subtract 2 from both sides, and I'm going to get the answer x equals negative 2 plus or minus the square root of 10 over 2. And that's going to be my solution. So I could write it like this, or I could write it x equals negative 2 plus the square root of 10 over 2, and x equals negative 2 minus the square root of 10 over 2. Either way, it is still going to be correct. You just have to decide which way you like. Now we're going to work out one more problem. Problem C. Now notice that this one has a leading coefficient of 1. So I encourage you to try this one on your own. Push pause, try it. When you're done, push play, and then see if you're right. So for problem C, we have x squared plus 2x plus 17. So the first thing that we're going to want to do is we're going to want to move over that 17. We didn't have to divide by anything because our leading coefficient was a 1. So we have x squared plus 2x plus leave a space equals negative 17 plus leave a space. Then we're going to take that middle number and we're going to divide that middle number by 2. 2 divided by 2 is a 1. So we're going to take that 1 and we're going to square it. Let's try this a little bit different. There we go. So we're going to square that 1. And 1 squared is 1. And that's what we're plugging into our empty spot. So 1 and 1. So then we want to rewrite this portion as something squared equals, and our something squared is going to be the x, and then our plus 1, because it was a positive 1 this time, right? Positive 1. Then we're going to take negative 17 and add 1 to it. That's going to give us a negative 16. And now we're ready to solve. So we're going to square root both sides. I'm going to keep track for the positive and the negative. So x plus 1 equals. And the square root of negative 16 is going to be a plus or minus 4i. Then I'm going to subtract 1 from each side. And that's going to give me x equals, I don't know why I wrote down a 4, x equals negative 1 plus or minus 4i. Okay, let's write this over here. So actually we don't need to. Or we could write this as x equals negative 1 plus 4i and x equals negative 1 minus 4i. Either way, it doesn't matter as long as you have both the positive and the negative represented. So this is how you solve a quadratic equation by completing the square.